Alright, so let's start off with Pod 1. So Little Orion traveled to Mars Hill where they won 29-21. South Dakota State wrapped up their non-con conference season as they traveled to southwestern Louisiana and won pretty easily 41-0. Saskatchewan traveled to British Columbia where they were lost 24-38. Middlebury had their first away game as they traveled to Bowdoin College where they won 39-15. After the last week of round one, South Dakota State gets the top spot with 74 points, and Little Orion falls to second place with 58.5. Middlebury is a good team, just their schedule didn't match up well with the tournament play this year, as they got third place with -8 points. And Saskatchewan brings up last place as they have had a tough year and have negative 38.83 points. Going into Pod 2, St. Francis Xavier were back on the road as they traveled to St. Mary's, where they won 19-17. New Hampshire stayed at home as they welcomed Bryant to town, where they won 38-17. Wartburg, for the third straight week, they stayed on the road and traveled to Central for the first American Rivers game, where they won 10-6. And Benedict stayed at home, where they welcomed Edward Waterstown, where they won 31-28. New Hampshire was able to recover from that rough week one loss to come out on top of this pod with 22.5 points, jumping St. Francis Xavier, who ended the round with 20.5 points. Benedict is working to get back on track with a win and getting into the positives with 12 points. And with one tough loss, Wartburg ends with fourth place at 4.5 points. Going into Pod 3, Harding stayed on the road as they traveled to Arkansas Monticello, where this game was never in question as they won 63-3. SMU comes off a bye week to face TCU at home for the Battle of the Iron Skillet, where they won 66-42. Sylvia Regina stayed on the road as they faced Rochester, where they lost 6-28, and Manitoba traveled to Calgary, where they won 22-17. Wrapping up round one for Pod 3, there was no change from last week's standings, as Harding showed why they are the top team in Division 2 with 189.5 points. SMU showing a good fight as with one loss, they still come out with 87.5 points. Manitoba is having a great season, but unfortunately they are not dominating enough games to get out of the first round as they finish with 66.5 points, one of the better third place finishes this year. Then Sylvia Regina opening win, they hadn't been able to give it. Let's rephrase that. After Sylvia Regina's opening win, they hadn't been able to get back on track with two straight losses, bringing them to negative 23 points. Going into Pod 4, Friends host Kansas Wesleyan, where they won a close one, 28-26. Oregon was off this week. Boise welcomed FCS opponent Portland State to town, where they won pretty easily, 56-14. Mount Allison welcomed Bishops to town. This game was over pretty quickly as they lost 62-0. There was no change to the standings this week from last week as Friends locked up the top spot with 149. Oregon was able to hold off Boise with 64 points. Boise State was not able to overcome the loss to Oregon and finished with 55.5 points. Mount Allison is struggling after their week one win and finished with negative 108 points. Pod 5 was never in question, really, as you came into week 4 with both Alabama and Montreal off. Central Missouri was going to need a big win. Unfortunately, Central Missouri stayed on the road as they take on Davenport, Michigan, where they won a close one, 32-31. Howard They made a trip over to Audi Field where they took on Hampton in the Battle of the Real HU where they lost 20-27. The order stayed the same, like I said, as both Alabama and Montreal were off and claimed the 1 and 2 spots with 137 points and 93 points. Central Missouri was not able to overcome the loss in week 3 and finished in third with 35.5 points. Howard is having a decent season so far, just one bad loss, and the rest being really close. Going into Pod 6, Oklahoma had Tennessee come to town where they suffered their first loss 15-25. Notre Dame had Miami, Ohio to come to town where they won 28-3. Michigan opened up the Big Ten season against USC where they won a close one, 27-24. Hawaii had FCS Northern Iowa come to town where they won 36-7. With Oklahoma losing and Notre Dame winning, they jumped to the top spot with 102.5 points, and Oklahoma taking the second spot with 65.5 points. In a surprising twist that no one saw coming at the beginning of the season, Hawaii comes in third with 36.5 points, and Michigan in fourth place with 23.5 points. Michigan just lost too much in the offseason and just couldn't recover. Going into Pod 7, Delaware stayed at home to play Penn Quakers where they won 29-22. UW-Whitewater welcomed Mary Hardin Baylor to town where they were given their first loss 17-35. Aurora opened conference play against St. Norbert where they won easily 49-0. British Columbia stayed at home, welcomed Saskatchewan to Vancouver where they won 38-24. After week 4, only 2 teams didn't change spot, Delaware being one of the 2, where they take the top seed with the 84.5 points. Aurora was able to jump UW-Whitewater for second place with 43.5 points, and UW-Whitewater falls to third with 26 points. British Columbia holds down the 4th spot with negative 18 points. Going into Pod 8, Western Ontario was off. Delta State welcomed Fort Valley to town where they won a close one, 27-24. Mount Union coming off the bye week, they welcomed John Carroll where they won 37-31. Wyoming traveled to North Texas where they lost 17-44. There is no change in the standings after week 4 with Western Ontario having 127 points for first place. Delta State in second with 77.5 points. Mount Union, one of the stronger third-place teams, with 66.5 points. And Wyoming still looking for their first win in fourth place with negative 107 points. Going into Pod 9, Trinity, Connecticut traveled to Maine to face off against Bates, where they won 28-7. St. John's, Minnesota was off. Colorado School of Mines traveled to play Cortez State for opening of Rocky Mountain Conference play and won a close one, 13-12. Monmouth, New Jersey traveled down to Miami to face off against FIU, where they won a surprising game, 45-42. Even with St. John's, Minnesota not playing this week, they were able to hold on to the top spot pretty easily with 81 points, followed by Colorado Mines with 49.5 points. Then Trinity, Connecticut with 43 points, which is impressive since they only played 2 games in this round, and Monmouth, New Jersey was not able to recover from their opening the season with 2 losses, but still has a respectable 18.5 points. Going into Pod 10, North Central Illinois, they stayed on the road as they traveled to Carthage, where they won in a dominant fashion, 63-0. North Dakota State welcomed Towson to town, where they won 41-24. Charleston, West Virginia welcomed UNC Pembroke to kick off Mountain East play, where they won 58-36. Southern Utah, they are back on the road as they traveled north to face off against Idaho State, where they lost 28-38. With the big win, North Central jumps North Dakota State to take the #1 spot with 102.5 points. North Dakota State staving off Charleston with 79 points to Charleston's 73. Southern Utah played a tough schedule and was not able to overcome a tough loss at the start of the season. They finished with negative 63.5 points. Going into Pod 11, Claremont Mudscripts traveled to face George Fox, where they won 27-17. LSU welcomes UCLA to Tiger Stadium, where they won 34-17. Kaiser opens up at home against Fort Lauderdale, where it was no doubt and won 45-0. Ottawa, Arizona stays at home to play Texas College, where they won 51-26. No change in position, with Kaiser sealing the top spot with 73.5 points. LSU pulling away from Claremont Mudscripts with 51.5 to Claremont Mudscripts 45. Ottawa, Arizona schedule just didn't line up well with the tournament, and with only 2 games wasn't able to get a win. Wasn't able to get ahead with 22 points. Going in to Pot 12, Wayne State, Nebraska was at Wyoming State and won 28-21. Edith, a home opener versus Hilbert, where they dominated 58-0. Randolph-Macon stayed at home as Barry College came to town, where they lost a close one, 24-28. Johns Hopkins home opener was spoiled as Salisbury won 41-13. Edith was able to jump Wayne State, Nebraska with 112 points. Then Wayne State falls to second place with 74.5 points. With a tough loss in the final week, Randolph-Macon and Johns Hopkins was not able to get out of the third and fourth place spot with 31.5 points and negative 7 points. Going into Pod 13, Georgia was off this week. Washington welcomes Northwestern to town for their first Big Ten Conference game and won 24-5. Houston put first away game as they traveled to Norwich, where they won 38-22. Pikeville stayed on the road as they traveled to Faulkner or something like that, where they lost 28-35. This was no doubt for Georgia and Washington to take top 2 spots, as Georgia finishes with the 93.5 points and Washington finishes with 80.5 points. Houston was never able to recover from the tough Week 3 loss and finished with negative 2 points. Pikeville lost too much in the offseason and was just not able to make another great run and haven't been able to get a win yet. Let's go to Pod 14. UNLV had a bye week this week. Cortland traveled to Susquehanna, where they won 40-38. Montana stays at home as they welcome Western Carolina, where they won 46-35. New Mexico State travels to Sam Houston for another CUSA game and lost 11-31. There was no change in the standings this week, with Cortland State taking the top spot with 158.5 points. UNLV coming in second with 97.5 points. Montana, with the best points for a third-place team, had 80 points. Then New Mexico State comes in fourth with negative 75. Pod 15 saw Northwestern Iowa stay at home as Midland came into town and won 17-7. Penn State welcomed Kent State to town, where they won easily 56-0. Bethel, Tennessee was off. Alberta head back to home to face Regina, where they won 30-6. There was no major changes in the standings, as with a big win, Penn State jumps to number 1 in the pod with 100.5 points, and Northwestern Iowa falls to second with 96.5 points. And Bethel, Tennessee had a bad week to be off, and they fall to third with 75 points. And Alberta stays in fourth with 32 points. All right, let's talk about round 2. Round 2 is going to be is going to be 6 pods of 5 teams, but you guys kind of want to hear the teams and what pod they ended up in. So let's start going with them. So Group A has St. John's, Minnesota, who's number 4. Has their first road game as they travel to face Bethel, Minnesota. Number 1 Kaiser has a bye week. Number 9 Penn State welcomes Illinois to town for a homecoming. Number 2 Montreal travels to face Sherbrooke. And Wayne State, who's receiving votes, has a bye week as well. Going into Group B, we have Portland State, who's number 2, has a bye week. Number 2 Georgia travels to Tuscaloosa for one of the biggest games in the SEC schedule as they go to face Alabama. Delaware will welcome Sacred Heart to town. Oregon travels down to Pasadena to face off against UCLA. Number 14 LSU welcomes South Alabama to town. I want to pause real quick. A lot of people might be noticing Delaware is one of the few teams that is not ranked. Delaware is not going to get a single ranking. In fact, if they actually move on after this week, they're going to be after this round. They're actually going to be in major trouble because they are transitioning from FCS to FBS. They are not eligible for any postseason play or conference championships, so they will just remain unranked and will not be participating in any postseason this year. Let's go to Group C. With a number 1 North Central Illinois, they welcome Washington, Missouri to their home opener. Number 4 Alabama, like I said earlier, welcomes SEC opponent Georgia to town. SMU, who's receiving votes, opens up ACC play as they welcome Florida State to town. Number 2 Northwestern Iowa heads onto the road where they face off against Doane. Washington, they travel across country to face off against Rutgers. Group D, you have number 21 Friends travels to Hillsborough, Kansas to face off against Tabor. Number 16 Notre Dame welcomes Louisville to town. Number 4 Western Ontario comes off a bye week to welcome Queens to town. Number 22 Aurora stays at home where they welcome Concordia, Illinois to town. UNLV, who's receiving votes and who just lost their starting quarterback this week, opens Mountain West play as they welcome Fresno State to town. Group E has the number 1 South Dakota State, who has a bye week this week. Ida, where they welcome RPI to town. St. Francis Xavier has a bye week. Number 21 Oklahoma travels to Auburn. Number 24 Delta State goes back on the road to face East Kings College. Group F has number 1 Harding stays at home where they welcome Henderson State to town. Number 20 New Hampshire has a bye week. Number 6 Lenore Ryan welcomes Tuscaloosa to town. Number 4 Colorado School of Mines welcomes Black Hills State for their homecoming game. And number 2 North Dakota State, they head out on the road and travel to Illinois State. As always, the rankings are from the FBS, the AP poll for FCS D2, D3, along with NAI. Those are all head coaches polls. U Sports is an overall ranking of the top 10 teams. I hope you guys are enjoying these videos. I'm enjoying making them. I'm enjoying kind of seeing where everything's happening. I am hoping to either later this week or next week put out a video of going over kind of where the state battles are at, kind of who's winning the states, who's looking like the top team out there. You know, you do not see one of the number 1 teams, Texas. SMU beat them out last year. Where's Texas standing at? Are they going to miss out again or something like that? Hope you guys enjoy. Like, comment, let me know what I can do better, what I can change up to make these videos a little more exciting. All right, guys. Thanks. Bye.